And when we get to role play, we'll see how that works. We'll probably do a couple and then we'll do some different things. All right, so let's go into objectives for this lesson. We're actually going to start using the knowledge we have about channels of communication for better customer interaction. We're also going to use good telephone etiquette and what that looks like when we're talking to folks on the phone. We're going to analyze some role playing if we can make that work. We'll see how the first one goes and then we'll see if we want to continue. It's helpful to have some case studies. So if the first role play doesn't work, we'll just read them off as case studies and then we can talk about those. Whoops. And then we want to give you a chance to understand your personality and operating style. So we'll spend some time with that assessment before we close the unit. So let's look at strategies of customer service. And my screen is bouncing around here and I'm not quite sure why. There we go. All right. So on your screen, you actually see some strategies in customer service. And let me pull open the book so I can make sure we're all in the same place for those of you who have the book. So we have talked about principles of good communication. For those of you who have the book on page 44, feel free to look at that bulleted list. That is what we're talking about with strategies for customer service. And so we want to walk through some of these strategies that will, they go beyond customer service and actually help you with interpersonal communication. It really is what we're talking about with customer service. So the first thing, and this actually was brought up by someone earlier today, we want to make sure we establish credibility. And this can be done in a number of ways. Sometimes it's just being friendly. Sometimes it's identifying yourself, right? So making sure that they understand your role in the organization. I know there are a couple of folks from GLWA who do samples at businesses and people get a little standoffish. Why are you here? What's wrong with my water? So establishing credibility early on is helpful. Keeping the customer informed. So this sometimes can be preemptive. So if you know you're going to visit a company, it might be helpful if it works in your workflow to let the company know ahead of time. Hey, I'm going to be out on Tuesday. This is routine. We're replacing a water main and we need to test your water for the next 7 days, right? So the more information they have, the better. Respond quickly if people reach out to you, whether it's answering the phone and not letting it ring 10 times or not keeping them on hold for too long, those kinds of things. Getting the answer as quickly as possible is helpful. I think all of us have probably experienced a customer service interaction as the customer where we're kept on hold for a long time and our temper just goes up and up. So definitely respond as quickly as you can. You want to know your subject matter. This does not mean you need to be an expert in all areas, but you do need to be able to respond with some confidence. And so if, for example, you are in a given area in the water department and you don't know about the information that's in water quality reports, I'm just making that up. You want to at least understand where they can get the information. So it's perfectly okay not to have information, to not know, but if your customer assumes that you know, you're going to at least want to be able to identify where to get the information. Perfectly okay to say, I don't know, but I will find out for you. And that's much better than being caught in a lie or making something up that simply isn't true. So know your subject as much as you can. You want to use understandable language, and this really talks about, is really focused on not using jargon. So in the water sector, we have all kinds of acronyms, every industry does. You want to make sure that you're not, like I just referred to the CCR, right? Customers don't know what a CCR is. So referring to it as the water quality report that comes with your bill every 3 months or whatever. The one that's on our website, let me take you to that website. Make sure that you're using language that your customer understands. It goes back to what we had talked earlier about using a vocabulary that makes sense for that customer. You want to keep the discussion focused. So I mentioned the elderly person who came in to pay their bill every month or every other month, who just wanted to talk. There's always going to be those folks. But if someone's got a problem that they want you to fix, it's really important to help them stay focused. Sometimes they can't stay focused, right? They've got a laundry list and life is just terrible, and you've just made it worse. All right, let's stay focused on the water issue, right? So figuring out how to keep the discussion focused. Listen attentively. We've talked about that. Obviously, you want to exhibit all the signs that you're listening attentively, but you also want to actually do that, right? Pay close attention. This is clearly very related to listen attentively, but for me, someone like me, I'm what I call a tactile listener. If you're going to be saying something to me that's highly technical or that includes a lot of details that I'm going to need to refer to, I'm going to be writing when you're talking. That doesn't mean I'm not listening to you, but I also then tend to, especially if I'm with someone in person and they can see what I'm doing, bear with me, I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. So what I hear you saying is, and I actually read back my notes so that they know I truly am writing what's relevant to the conversation. So just make sure that you are doing those activities. Don't interrupt. With the exception of this class, feel free to jump in, but you want to make sure you're giving them space to really express themselves. You want to ask questions, make sure you understand really what the issue is. You may need to actually ask some technical questions, right? I know some of you that take water quality calls may need to ask things like, what does your water look like? How long has this been going on? Those kinds of things. Show concern. You really want to show, if someone thinks that they're going to get cancer from their water, don't laugh at them. You and I know it's not true, but 9 times out of 10, right? Or maybe 99 times out of 100. But you do want to show empathy for their concern. And so making sure that you're not making them feel stupid or making it seem like their concern is inconsequential, right? So give them some validity, even if you just need to educate them a little bit. Repeat information to confirm. That's a really important point. It not only communicates that you've been listening, but it also confirms your understanding. It also gives them an opportunity to change their mind, right? So sometimes customers just need to talk it through, and when you say it back to them and they hear it, then they may retract some of the action that they would like you to take. So that's a helpful step. You want to give them time to express themselves. This is sort of related to don't interrupt, but some people take a little time to find their words. We already talked about the barrier to listening in terms of language skills. If someone's first language isn't English, then you definitely want to give them time to find the words. This one can be difficult, right? If you've got 10 people on hold or in line, or you've got 25 businesses to visit, and you've got one person who's struggling to compile a sentence, it's really hard to be patient, but you really do need to give them time to express themselves. The next one, exhibit poise and self-control. This really is at the heart of being professional, right? As much as, and we'll talk about hot buttons in the final lesson, but as much as sometimes we just want to say, would you get to the darn point? You really have to keep your emotions in check and maintain your self-control. Even when someone's losing their temper, you need to be calm and rational and professional despite how they might be losing their temper. Respond with short words and facial expressions. This actually helps keep the focus on the customer. So things like nodding your head when they're talking so that they know you're listening. I hear you, I understand. I have a question about that, but keep going. Those kinds of things help reinforce that you are listening. You want to focus on the concern, and this is a little bit related to keep the discussion focused, but once you get to the heart of the problem, you don't want to make it bigger than it needs to be, right? So although they might have lead service lines in their home, they called you today because they're mostly concerned about their water bill. stay focused on that water bill for that one interaction. You could certainly, if it's appropriate, put that secondary issue, whatever it is, sort of to the end of the call. If you have time, I'd like to talk with you about, you know, maybe you've been trying to get in to do a sample or something, but initially you want to stay focused on their concern, why they called you or are engaging with you in the first place. And then if you can, assure the customer. This is a little bit situation dependent, right? So in some cases, you don't have the information to assure the customer in terms of solving their problem. You hopefully have the confidence and the wherewithal to actually say to them, you know what, I'm going to do everything in my power to address this concern. That's assuring the customer, even if you can't actually fix it. And we'll talk a little bit about unfixable situations because those do exist, but as much as possible, you really want to make sure that you are able to assure the customer that their concern is going to be addressed. Any questions before we go on? Okay, so let's take a quick poll. This might be our last one, actually. Let's see. No, we got a couple more. How quickly do you think people form opinions about you? Go ahead and take a wild guess. And if you have the book, you have the answer on page 45. So we'll give you guys just a few minutes to guess, a few seconds here. Take a guess. How quickly do you think people form opinions about you? And this is assuming I've just met you or a customer who's just called, right? All right, I'll give you another second. Looks like we're waiting for a couple more people. Okay. And so some of you who had the book got it. If you look at your book on page 45, 7 seconds is the average amount of time it takes someone to make an opinion about you based on your appearance. This is assuming they can see you, right? Or that they can hear you. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier today about humans being wired to put things in buckets to assess safety. We are hardwired to make quick judgments. That's just the way our genetics are. So it's not surprising that it's seconds, right? 7 seconds. The good news is you can actually help change that opinion by behaving in a certain way. But just know that in the first 7 seconds, you've already made your first impression. So just something to keep in mind as we continue our discussion. So let's take a look. If you are following us, and actually, whoops, I just lost my mouse. Sorry about that. And so this is the result, basically. People form opinions and make judgments about us in the first 7 seconds they see us. Now we're going to take a look at a variety of communication methods that lead up to, that are involved in customer service in action. So let's take a look at interactions on the phone. There are studies that show that the tone of our voice is actually way more important than what we say on the phone, right? So even if I use jargon, if I use 25-cent words, maybe even if I have an accent that you can't understand, you're going to be much more likely to give me the benefit of the doubt if it sounds like I'm nice, if it sounds like I care, if it sounds like I'm not bored, right? So the tone of your voice matters. You know, there is an exercise that we won't be able to do. It's a little hard to do in virtual, but reading a couple of scripts and trying to decide if someone is smiling or frowning, you really can tell the difference. It's kind of astounding. You can pick up someone's mood often by just their voice. The other thing, oh, I do need to give you a percentage because this one is in the quiz. Several studies have indicated that as much as 87%, so that's the dark green that you see on your screen, 87% of what people get from our conversation is based on your tone of voice, not on your words. So that's a pretty dramatic thing. You can lose a customer, not lose as in going somewhere else for business, but you can lose them in that interaction if they think you're checked out or you don't care. So now, phone etiquette, this is probably a review for most of you. Typically, we encourage people to do a particular script for answering the phone. So you want to buffer your organization name and your name. The buffer really is a greeting. Good morning, good afternoon, thank you for calling. Those kinds of things are buffers. This helps establish, hello, I'm about to speak to you, right? So that's the purpose of the buffer. The organization name is to confirm that they've reached the right place. And of course, your name is to establish some sense of relationship with the person who's on the phone. So you want to make sure you have all of those things. It can get a little fuzzy, maybe gray, if you have a variety of phone auto attendants. So for example, when you call the section, our office, we have a computerized auto attendant who gives you the buffer and the organizational name and then instructions. That's very often what happens when you call a cable company or a phone company. You reach a computer who gives you the buffer and the organizational name. You can choose to, once someone gets to you, a human, you can choose to use all three again, or you can choose a modification of that. You just want to be mindful of your customer's experience in your phone system, right? If they've been dialing 0 and 9 and all kinds of numbers and saying representative, customer service, and getting madder and madder and madder, know that by the time they get you, just answering the phone hello is not going to cut it, right? So just be mindful of your own phone systems experience. This is a really important point and really very frustrating, honestly. People will repeat a negative story 9 to 11 times, but they only repeat a positive story about 3 times. You know, there's an axiom, I guess, in news media that says if it bleeds, it leads, right? If you wonder why there are so many sad or violent stories in the news, it's that principle, right? Unfortunately, they still live by that that mantra that if it bleeds, it leads, because that's what gets people's attention. That's what people talk about. That's what people click on. Unfortunately, what that does is it falsely conveys that something is worse than it really is. So for example, if you have a social media presence, your water system has a social media presence, and one person posts some issue they have with water and it's bad, their water tastes bad, it's discolored, whatever, that's going to get shared a lot more than I had the best phone call with my water department yesterday, right? So just know that when you're interacting on the phone, giving them a positive experience doesn't get you as far as a negative experience puts you back. It is unfortunate, but it's something to be mindful of. So you really want to make sure that whoever's interacting with customers, particularly on the phone, because it's much harder to recover on the phone, you want to make sure that the experience is as positive as possible. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the customer's always right. They're not always right, but you do want to make sure that their experience on the phone is positive. All right, let's jump over to, I think we're on page 48, yes. So we're gonna, let me, not quite to 48, I think we're on 47. Let's talk a little bit about empathy and customer frustration. So we've talked a little bit about empathy already today. The idea of empathy is seeing with another's eyes, listening from their perspective, feeling their feels, so to speak. It's not easy to do, but hopefully you guys are seasoned customer service professionals, so you have experience with this. We all have some experience in empathy in one form or another. The issue is learning to apply empathy in the customer service process. It's really important in terms of getting to that top level of listening skill, being empathetic. We definitely want to try our best to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. And then a little bit on customer service frustration, as I mentioned, the negative story repeat versus the positive story. There are, let's see, I think this is in the book specifically, so let me make sure I have this right. Yeah, here we go. So this company, a marketing company, did a survey and found that customers are becoming more frustrated with the level of service that's available. Now this survey is probably 5 years old now, so I would imagine it has evolved. Some companies have addressed this, but 91% of people say that they're frustrated because they have to contact the company multiple times. They have to call you more than once. 90% are being put on hold for an extended period of time. And 89% have repeat issues that are never fully addressed. So they have to talk to multiple representatives. How many of you have experienced this in the last year, right? Where you've had to call a company multiple times, or you've been left on hold for a long time. It's maddening, isn't it? Especially when you have 100 things to do. You're just trying to get food cooked and kids with homework and all that stuff. You just want to get that stuff done, and you get stuck on hold for 20 minutes. I think I was on hold with Verizon for almost an hour a couple of months ago. It was kind of astounding. All right, let's talk about face-to-face. So we've already identified this early today, but the light gray that you see in the pie is really about nonverbal communication. And then the rest is verbal. So unlike phone, where all they have to go on is your tone of voice, when you're face-to-face, to a certain extent on Zoom, although it's harder because all you can see is, from my shoulders up. You can't actually see the ridiculous outfit I have on. When you're face-to-face, you can take in everyone's entire body language. So it's not just their facial expressions, it's whether or not they cross their arms, it's their frown, it's hands on the hips, those kinds of things, right? So what they say, actually speaking, is about a third of what really is communicating. Mostly it's what people see, but it also goes into their other senses too. So just keep in mind, for face-to-face, nonverbal matters. Body language is key. Again, if we were in person, I don't think I can back up enough. Let me see if I can. We'll do this really quick. Okay, so you can see me a little bit. If you cross your arms, basically what that does is it closes people off to your access, right? It also tells people that you are resistant. There's a theory, a power theory, that says if you stand like this, so I'm standing with my arms in a Y, or if you stand with your hands on your hips, it actually makes you feel more powerful. If you stand with your hands on your hips in an interaction where someone is angry, it's actually perceived as aggressive or as threatening. So be mindful of body language. Everything you do matters. It actually helps when you're out in the field and you actually have your arms full, because then you really can't do anything with your facial or your body language. It also helps in terms of whether or not you're making eye contact, whether or not you're slouching. All of those things send signals to folks. So be very mindful of that, okay? Any questions before we move on? Okay. We're going to talk about communicating in writing next. I don't know how many of you do a lot of the communicating with your customers in writing, but we're going to cover both sort of structured writing and letters and emails. Before we do that, I just want to show you a quote. I want you to take a look at the quote, read it to yourself, and then I'm going to ask you a question after it. But I'm only going to leave the quote up for a little bit, okay? So here's the quote. Two of the most powerful and effective of all human fears are the fear of failure and the fear of success. Now I'm going to stop share real quick. Anybody have any idea how many F's are in that quote? Any idea? All right, let me put it back up and you can count it. If I can actually get my mouse to work. Sorry. All right. Somebody tell me how many F's are in this quote. You can shout it out or you can type it in chat, either one. If we were in person, I'd toss you a candy bar if you answered.
12 F's.
I counted 11.
Kind of 12.
Excellent. So Karina counted 6. Deshay counted 11. And I don't know, who was it that spoke 12?
Victor.
Thank you, Victor. So there are 11 here. And part of the reason why people get less than 11 is because when we read it, most of us read it in our minds. We actually hear the words. We don't actually see the F's that aren't pronounced as an F. So when you look at of, your brain skips it as an F because you're thinking in your head V, right? I don't know why that is, but know that because as you start constructing things that people are reading, know that they're not looking at every single letter, right? So you got to be really purposeful and mindful of the words you choose. So let's take a look at some writing practices, letters, emails, texts, even instant messaging. Is anybody here instant messaging customers? Okay. I would have been surprised if anybody had said yes. So there are a couple of principles here that you want to make sure you cover. First of all, you want to make sure it's easy to read and easy to understand. So you want to get to the point. You want it to be clear professional language. You don't want to use jargon. You definitely want to use proper grammar. You want to use proper spelling, punctuation, those kinds of things, just good writing practices. You want to tend to use a neutral tone of communication. So the idea there is that you don't want anyone to be able to read in between the lines. You know how you can get an email and it sounds like somebody's being snotty, but there's no sound, it's just an email, right? That's the tone of communication, so you want to make sure your tone is neutral. You want to be thoughtful and polite, so you still want to use a buffer. Hello, Bonifer, I'm sorry you've had this concern, those kinds of things. And then check it twice before you actually send. And here's just a prime example. It just hurts my heart a little bit that it happened again today. For those of you who are AWWA members, you will have gotten 2 emails this morning. One had a typo in it, and it was a really ugly, embarrassing typo because it announced our annual business meeting, and I'm required by bylaws to send that notice out to members, and I send it 3 different ways. I send it email, I print it in the news magazine, and I post it on our website. Unfortunately, the annual business meeting is in September, and the date in the email was June. So some kind-hearted soul emailed me this morning before class started and said, "Hey, Buffer, did you know that this is yesterday's date?" So quickly, one of my staff jumped in and saved the day and sent out the corrected email. Always, always, always have your things checked twice. Anything in writing really does need a second set of eyes. Now, interestingly, that email was proofed twice by 2 different people, but it still happens, right? Just like some of you counted less than 11 Fs or more than 11 Fs, you can miss stuff. So it's not always going to be perfect, but definitely make sure you have a support system that allows you to check things multiple times. Questions on these concepts so far? Okay. I want to get a little bit into email, into the details of email, and this is somewhat related to texts and instant messaging, but we'll cover that a little bit separately. So a couple things that you should keep in mind when you're emailing customers, and this is both internal and external customers. This is something that I've noticed is really, especially since COVID, people have gotten a little bit more lax on. And you just want to be mindful of this, particularly with external customers, but definitely with internal as well. So for when you're writing an email, number one is you get the content down. So what is it that you're trying to say? Get it all down there, right? The second piece is go back and read it for that care element. Is your email showing that you connect with this person on a human level? And by that I mean this, and I've already described for you guys that I am a direct communicator. I get to the bottom line. I'm very abrasive, or can be. I have to really think about things like, you know, if I've been working for 2 hours already and I start firing emails off to staff, they're like, whoa, Bonifer, wait, geez. How about a good morning first, right? So when I send an email, I have to make sure that I'm thinking about from my customer's perspective, what has their day been like so far, right? Have I talked to them already today? If I have, I don't have to say good morning, but I can say, hey, Stacy, would you do this for me? So make sure that there's an element of humanity in your email. You don't have to be syrupy nice. I'm not asking you to send flowers, but you definitely want to show that you're human and that you have some empathy for their situation. Never, 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 I can't say never enough, send an email when your emotions are high. Never, never, never. Nothing good comes out of it. Let me say it again. Never send an email when your emotions are high. Here's what you do instead. If you get an email or you've had a particularly unpleasant interaction with a customer, internal or external, write the email, close it, save it and close it. You've got it out of your system, step away from the keyboard. I say hands off the keyboard. That's why I'm doing this. Hands off the keyboard. Do not hit send. Then you come back to it when you're a little calmer and you can actually write an appropriate email. There are a couple things there. First of all, you can't take it back. It doesn't matter if Outlook says recall this message, it's already delivered, right? Secondly, for most of you, I think all of you are municipality employees, that's public record. So whatever you put in writing is shareable. Imagine that email being printed on the cover of the magazine, the headline news for the evening news. Do you really want that out there? Do not hit send. The next thing is, if it takes more than 3 emails to communicate, you need to pick up the phone, right? So, and this is particularly true with internal customers. How many times we go back and forth about a detail about something. You know what? We're not communicating. Let's pick up the phone so we can actually have a dialogue. Those 3 rules for email, if you follow them, will get you light years from any problems that you could run into. The thing I'll say about texts and instant messages are just and texts are just a little bit different in email because they're by nature shorter. And I don't know the age of anyone on our in our class today, but particularly the younger folks among us tend to use abbreviations in text and certainly in instant messaging. Do not use abbreviations or text shorthand in an email. Also know that texts and instant message, if you are using corporate technology, is also FOIA-able, right? It's also public record. And if you're using a personal phone that's texting someone for business, ultimately, if you're involved in any kind of lawsuit, your personal phone can now be subject to subpoena. So just know that when you're engaging customers in a professional setting, always be professional and consider that what you're putting in writing doesn't go away ever, right? Even if you hit delete, somewhere it still lives. So just be careful. Any questions or comments on that? I kind of harped on the email thing a little bit, but it's an issue I see often. Any war stories anybody want to share? Regretful emails that you want to confess?
I don't have any stories to share, but I totally agree with you about writing the email and not sending it. Because a lot of times, whatever frustration you're feeling, by the time you've finished writing that,
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of lost it already. And then you go back and you can write something that's more empathetic, as you say. But for some reason, it felt good to write that. Even in your that to me that follows through in my personal life too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You let that anger out
Yeah.
because it's just how you're feeling.
Mhm.
And like we've talked about, if you're not doing face by face, you cannot tell what emotion you're
Right.
sending and how they're going to take it.
Right.
And you would, like you say, you can't take it back. So once it's out there, whether it's a customer or family member, you got to live with that.
Right.
And then you've got them going around telling everybody else in the, the neighborhood, oh yeah, I've talked to the water department and that Deborah, God, you don't want to get her, so you always have to be careful, whether it's business or personal.
Yeah, it's true. It's just good communication, right?
Mhm.
I'll tell you a funny story and then we'll go on. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Katie.
I was gonna say, I agree too with the other thing you said about, if you've emailed back and forth several times, it's time to pick up the phone, because there's, I've seen that a couple times in my office where there's this kind of email chat going back and forth and back and forth. And, I can see what's being lost in translation because I'm being copied on it. And it gets so frustrating. It's like, oh, you guys are not communicating well. Stop.
Yeah.
Just pick up the phone. Ask those follow-up questions instead of having 12 emails back and forth. It's
Right.
really, I definitely, if it can't be done quickly, then talk to someone on the phone.
Right. Right.
I would say mine's it wasn't necessarily email. Well, it included a email, but it wasn't like a full conversation involving email. I used to work for OnStar, and I was like the person that fixed the GPSs through people's cars.
Yeah.
And the people that are supposed to transfer the call to us, they sometimes won't let us know who we're talking to after they've already yelled at that person and stuff. So one time they just transferred a call to me, and I'm like, hello, and I hear, hello, is this such and such? I'm like, no, this is not her. And then I got an email saying, he's your problem. I'm like,
Wow.
okay.
Wow. That's crazy. I've never heard of
Mhm.
that. I'm sorry for you.
Yeah, I mean, I dealt with it the best I could. So.
All right. Yeah. Wow. That's remarkable. Yeah. There are some people are not cut out to be in customer service at all.
No.
All right. Well, let's talk about techniques for clear communication. We've talked about a variety of aspects of effective communication. So on your screen, you have this flow chart, if you will, and I believe this is in your book as well. It is on page 49. And so you start with a message. You know what you want to say. You want to focus in, minimize distractions. You want to concentrate on the customer, concentrate on the main points. And this is regardless of your method of communication. So whether you're in face-to-face or in writing or on the phone, this is how you hone in on good understanding, clear communication. When you tune in, it really is about that attentive and empathetic listening, right? Take notes if that's how it helps you. Some people don't have to take notes. You want to match the customer's pace. This is a really important thing. If somebody's angry and they've been on the phone for 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and you're the escalating, right? So Deshay, you were well into this experience for this customer. You want to know that there is a sense of urgency now. They are done being on the phone. They're very angry. So the quicker you can speak and respond and get answers, the better. On the other hand, if you are the first person that they've engaged with, and this is a person who's struggling to communicate, they're having a hard time finding words, they don't really understand the problem, they just know that something isn't working right, Now you want to take it a step back. You want to dial back. You want to go nice and slow so they don't feel rushed. So you want to match the customer's pace. Managing your assumptions, that's a big one. We've talked about that a lot today. It's difficult to manage those assumptions when you've taken 35 calls already, and everybody's calling about water quality, but you really do need to manage your assumptions. So yes, listen, it sounds like you know what's coming. Ask those confirming questions to make sure it's what you think. Just manage your assumptions. And then you want to check, you want to make sure that you're actually asking those clarifying questions, confirm your understanding, and those are a little bit different. Asking clarifying questions really is asking for more information to make sure you understand. Confirming your understanding actually means repeating back what you think the situation is in your own words to see how it's received by the customer. That really is a helpful step in the customer understanding that they've been heard and that you truly do understand what the concern is. And that, of course, at the end leads to shared understanding. That really is the whole point about communication, and it's really the heart of customer service is shared understanding. Now, what that means is there's a certain amount of give and take, right? So although a customer comes to you expecting to be served and maybe expecting to be right, you're very likely going to be giving them information or service that addresses a need that maybe they don't know they have, or that addresses a need that fixes their concern. So there is some give and take. It really is important for there to be shared understanding. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to agree with the customer or the customer needs to agree with your solution, because sometimes they won't. But it does mean that the customer needs to understand that you've done everything in your power to address their concern and believe that you had empathy with their concern. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Great. All right, that takes us to another exercise. And let's see. I want to see. Okay, this is a self-assessment. So for those of you with books, you can go ahead and work through page 50, or you can do it along with the group. I'm going to stop sharing screen. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to, this is a self-assessment, to see how well you communicate with customers through more subtle skills. So these are simple yes/no questions. And we're looking for a score in the neighborhood of 8 to 10. There are 10 questions. You are going to give yourself a point for each yes, okay? And I'm just going to run through these questions and you can answer yes or no. So just make a tick mark for every point you get, I guess. So here we go. Do you try to put a smile into your voice when you're talking with a customer? Number 2, do you make a point of never sounding impatient? Number 3, do you speak slowly and clearly? Number 4, do you always identify yourself early in the interaction? And number 5, do you keep your voice calm with angry customers? Number 6, do you have a friendly yet professional tone of voice? Number 7, do you try to keep your voice from sounding routine even though you may answer the same question dozens of times? Number 8, do you end conversations in a positive, upbeat way? Number 9, do you try to phrase your conversation on difficult topics in a positive way? And number 10, do you separate your emotions and mind from the previous interaction before taking the next one? So I'll give you a second to add up your score. Anybody want to share their score? Okay, I'll share mine. I'm at a 6, and I gave myself a 6 because there are many of these that I have to be very conscious about doing. So I gave myself a no in those, right? I just gave myself a point for the ones that I do all the time. And that was just the way I approached the quiz. It's really just a self-assessment to make sure you're aware of all these things. We're always striving to do the best we can. Just know that this is really a checklist to make sure that if somebody's really getting out of sorts, this might be a barometer for you. Like, okay, am I presenting myself in a way that's exacerbating the situation, or am I presenting myself in a way that's helping to calm the situation? So it gives you some good tools. All right. Now we're into role play. So I'm going to stop screen and, oh, I'm actually not sharing. Good. All right. So let me see what makes the most sense. Let's do this. Let's do one. All right. So let's do, let me see back in, oh yeah. We're about 2 hours into the afternoon. Are you guys ready for a break? Or you want to power on? What would you prefer? I have one power on. Anybody really need a break?
Depends. We power on. How early do we get up?
Well, we're scheduled to go to 3:45. I'm trying to get you out of here at 3:30. We're a little bit behind, but I don't know that role play is going to last that long. So I think we'll move on to section 4 or section 5 pretty quickly here. So we're talking about the difference of 15 minutes.
Power on.
Okay, you
Power
got it.
on.
All right. So for those of you with books, you do have the role-playing scripts in front of you. They're actually 51 to the end of the chapter. I think what we're going to do, just for time's sake, is we're going to have 2 of you with books do role play 1, and then we'll talk about the rest as a group. Sound okay? And we'll get through them pretty quick. This is really, unfortunately, this is really the heart of the class, getting you to have some practice. Cam, you'll be happy because now I'm not picking on you. Because if we were in class, I would actually be pairing you guys up and you would each do a role play. So look at virtual as a benefit, right? All right, so let's see who I can pick on here. I see you covering your face to Shay. Deborah just got her book. Okay, I'm going to pick on Joel, and how about Katie?
It does
Cam,
look like there's.
wait. Did I just see Cam raise his hand? Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry.
It
Who was
looks like
speaking? Yeah, go ahead.
there look like there's 3 roles in number 1. There's a
Yeah,
crew
I'll be number
leader,
3.
HR. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to be your crew leader. And Katie, do you want to be CSR or customer?
Customer.
Okay, so Joel, you are the CSR, okay?
Right.
All right, so ring ring.
Main Town Water Department. This is Jeff. How may I help you?
I don't have any water and I'm trying to get ready for work.
Can you please give me your address?
It is 123 Elm Street. How long until I can get some water?
Okay, Miss Jones. I have your account up and I don't see any notations on it. However, we have a crew working in that area. Let me give them a call and see if there's been some problem with their job. Is your phone number still 555-1234?
Yes, but I need to get my water back on.
I understand, Miss Jones. Just let me call the crew leader and I'll get right back with you.
Okay, but hurry. I can't be late for work.
Ring, ring, ring.
This is Sharon.
Hi, Sharon. This is Jeff at the Operations Center. I just had a call from 1234 Elm that they're out of water. I have a memo that you have an outage today, but this address is not on the list.
Yeah, I know, Jeff. One of the valves wouldn't seat, so we had to move up to the next one down. We have 2 additional blocks shut off now.
Okay, Sharon, the supervisors have told us that the crews were instructed to call in when there is an unplanned shutdown or one has to be changed in the field. Now our phones are ringing off the hook and we haven't known what to tell the customers.
Hey, Jeff, I'm in the middle of trying to do this job in the pouring rain with angry drivers honking at me, and you're sitting in a nice warm office. I would have told you when I had a chance. I'm busy with the job right now.
Well, what do I tell the customers that we're not prepared for the shutdown? How long will the water be off?
We're working as fast as we can, and this call's just taking more time. I'm guessing 2 hours. I'll try to let you know when I'm done. All right. So that
Ding,
was
ding,
role
ding.
play. Yeah. Okay. Hello. Keep going. Yep.
There's more.
Yep.
Oh,
Thanks.
hello?
Miss Jones, this is Jeff from the Maintown Water Department.
Yes, how long before I have water?
I'm very sorry for the inconvenience, Miss Jones. The repair job in your neighborhood was worse than they had anticipated, and even though we notified the customers we thought would be affected, the crew had to shut off more of the system to make the repair. The crew leader tells me that it may be about
What am I supposed to do about getting to work?
Again, Ms. Jones, I apologize for the inconvenience, and we will get the water back on just as soon as we possibly can.
Great. Thanks for the prior notification. Nice way to start the day. Click.
All right. So now it's analysis time. Who wants to go first? I'd like to hear what you think about this interaction. What were the good parts? What were the bad parts? Okay, let's,
I think the customer service rep like did the best he could with the situation. He didn't really get mad with either one of them, but he was like he kind of had a little bit of frustrating moment with the guy out on the field. But
yeah,
he came back to the customer with a reasonable explanation.
right. He did follow up. He was very calm on the phone. Good. What else? Was the
In
customer
my
reasonable?
interactions with the extra,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I think the customer was pretty reasonable. I was definitely nicer to the customer than the internal customer service. I
Right,
had external better than internal,
right.
but it was just the script.
Yeah. Anything else you observed?
It seemed like the person that didn't notify more people about the problem with the issue, it seemed like more of a complaint,
Mhm.
but in a way, when you work in that type of environment, working in the rain and stuff all like that, it's going to be times when you don't have the time to just grab a phone and just pick up. But that's why you have backup people to do that for you
Right,
in that case.
right. What do you think the customer service rep could have done differently with the internal customer? This is a question for anybody. What could he have done differently with the internal customer?
I think he could have just found the information that he needed, but then like talk to her about the issue later, like brought it up when she was less stressed,
Right,
so that it would be less of a fight and more constructive.
yeah.
I think
Any
it
other?
should, I think there was not much sympathy for the internal person in their struggles and issues.
Right, there was no empathy at all for this poor person standing in the rain trying to deal with a bigger job than she thought she was going to have, right?
Yes.
All right. So the lesson here really is just don't forget that we have both internal and external customers, right? Okay. When you get your book, I encourage you to read through all of the role plays and think about those situations. It seems kind of hokey, but it's helpful to think through the situations. One of the advantages to a training like this is it really just makes you more mindful so that you're more prepared when these kinds of situations come up. Any questions before we move on? Okay. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that you guys have been saved from role plays, but I think thank you, Katie and Joel. Nice job. We're going to go ahead and move on just for the sake of time. And I believe I'm at the tail end of this, but I just want to make sure. Yes, there's role play. Oh, we have one more thing. We want to cover operating style. And this, for those of you with the book, is really on page 57. Let me see if this is going to work here. All right, so when you get your books, if you don't have them already, I'm actually going to stop sharing screen because it's not helpful. when you get your books, I encourage you to go through the book from front to back and do the exercises. Most of them we will have done in the class, not all of them. This one in particular will be helpful for you, but I'm going to read through some of this so you can just think about it, and then we'll move on to our last lesson. So we want to, this is sort of a self-assessment, but it's really about identifying your day-to-day operating style. And so there are just 3 sort of big buckets with some various characteristics listed. I'm going to read them all. Just think about the characteristics that fit you. I know it's a little hard to do when you can't actually see it on paper, but make some notes if you have some notes, or ask questions if you want to stop me. So the first one is, I have a good interpersonal skills. Let me start again. I have good interpersonal skills as demonstrated by my ability to, and then you would check any that apply, build consensus and agreement within a team, work with diverse customers in a fast-paced environment, handle difficult and angry customers, demonstrate a positive attitude at all times, and demonstrate interaction skills. I have good interpersonal skills as demonstrated by my ability to build consensus and agreement within a team, work with diverse customers in a fast-paced environment, handle difficult and angry customers, demonstrate a positive attitude at all times, and demonstrate interaction skills. Okay, that's one bucket. Another one is, I have excellent active listening skills as shown by my ability to pay attention, listen well, always be attentive, make a conscious effort to listen, and use note-taking skills. I have excellent active listening skills as shown by my ability to pay attention, listen well, always be attentive, make a conscious effort to listen, and use note-taking skills. And then the last bucket is, I am professional at all times as shown by my ability to respect team members' differences, interact well with team members from diverse cultural backgrounds, and work cooperatively as a team member. I am a professional at all times as shown by my ability to respect team members' differences, interact well with team members from diverse cultural backgrounds, and work cooperatively and as a team member. So the idea here really is to help give you a sense of what your strengths are in terms of your operating style, and gives you a sense of what you need to work on there. So this last lesson, and I want to verify, I don't think we have an activity for lesson 4, or yeah, for lesson 4, let me see. We do have a very short activity. So I'm going to ask you to pop out to Tovuti, do the activity, take the quiz. It should really only take about 5 minutes, so just go there and back. So as soon as you're done, come on back and we'll get started with lesson 5.